Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Alicia Wilson, and I am the Vice President for Economic Development for Johns Hopkins University and Health System. And it is my pleasure to introduce to you two amazing entrepreneurs for this week's edition of Entrepreneurship Matters. This is our 41st week of featuring entrepreneurs from our community that demonstrate that it takes undiluted passion, multiple failures, a long-term commitment, and a lot of grit to make it happen. Cameron Moses, a young entrepreneur, inspired us to launch this series 41 weeks ago, and I'm so glad she did because we are continuing to uplift entrepreneurs from our community for you to frequent and to support alongside us. So with that, I want to introduce you and present to some of you Daya Lott and Dana Smith, two entrepreneurs in the yoga industry. This is the first time we featured yoga entrepreneurs. So I'm going to invite both of them to come on screen as I give you their bios, and then we launch right into the conversation today. So let me start with Daya Lott. Daya is the founder of Spiritual Living by Shay, previously known as Shay Yoga LLC, a Black-owned natural goods store and yoga studio offering holistic products and yoga services to uplift and support the spirit, mind, body, and home. She began her spiritual philosophy, spiritual practices, and natural products and remedies more than 2 decades ago. She's a trauma-informed and certified yoga teacher with study, training, and experience in spiritual philosophies and spiritual practices of indigenous people from around the world. Before creating Spiritual Living by Shay, Daya worked as a trial attorney, a law professor, legal supervisor, trainer, and grassroots organizer in Indianapolis and DC. We're going to talk about how does that fold into her work now and her life's passion. Daya is also a trained anti-violence and anti-racism advocate and facilitator mediator with experience developing and conducting trainings in diversity, inclusion, and anti-racism, anti-oppression spiritual principles. All of her work through Spiritual Living by Shay is directly inspired by the many lessons and practices that she has acquired along her spiritual path. Next, I want to introduce you to Dana Smith. Dana is the founder and owner of Spiritual Essence Yoga and the creative visionary behind the international Yes Yoga Has Curves movement. I love that. I have curves, so this is great. This is giving me life. She is a wife, mother, certified yoga instructor, author, yoga trainer, teacher, master life coach, and holistic health practitioner. For more than 20 years, she has been a pioneer for inclusive yoga in the West with a simple yet profound message. Listen to this. Yoga is for everybody. As the creator of Jiva Life Yoga, a national yoga alliance approved and registered yoga style, Dana guides students and teachers in training in a dynamic experience of yoga as a powerful tool for total life transformation. We were talking about that earlier. I'm going to get right into that. She said she's been better today than she was in her 20s. So we're going to talk about that. Even though she has trained nearly 300 yoga teachers since 2008, she considers herself a lifelong student and continues to seek inspiration through workshops and advanced studies. She has been featured everywhere. I mean, literally everywhere. From NBC4, Fox 5, The Examiner, Essence Magazine, WHUR, NPR, and Black Enterprise. Welcome to both of you for this session of Entrepreneurship Matters. This is really a treat for all of us, especially me. I'm going to learn a lot during this session, given that I've never done yoga before. So want to get right into the conversation. And why don't I start with you, Daya? What inspired you to explore, to be an entrepreneur? But also, can you talk a little bit about what inspired you to choose yoga as your vocation as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, my new industry. So yeah, I can talk about it. So I guess if I could give it to you in just 2 words, what inspired it would be institutional racism. that I had been working against for about a decade as a social justice attorney throughout my career. So before starting the business, I was a social justice attorney. And so, people always say, you can fight the system from within it. No, you can't. What it'll do is try and destroy you, right? And so prior to actually even starting law school and starting my legal career, I had already been practicing yoga. So I've been practicing yoga as a student for about almost 20 years now. And so I had started that practice even before going to law school, and that kind of carried me through. I had kind of come into yoga with like anxiety and depression and things like that. And so that helped me like along the way, just even in my career as an attorney. But then once, things took a turn, I became more experienced. You start to move up within, institutions, you start to see the full picture of how everything is playing out, where institutional racism lies. And so my personality, it's like, you know what, I'm going to tell you the truth no matter what. People didn't want to hear it, and I was pushed right on out. And so instead of being discouraged from doing the work, the social activism work, I knew going in that there was more than one way to do it. And so after kind of going through a period of using yoga to go through my own healing and kind of self-actualization process, to start that process, I then was like, you know what, this is a really powerful way incorporating spiritual philosophy, which is, just ancient philosophy, ancient wisdom, into the current social movements that we see the need for today. So a little bit before kind of the pandemic started, about 2 or 3 years before, some of the inspiration for this particular business came to me during a meditation. And so I went with it. When you get a message from spirit, when you get a message from source, you go with it. I've been hard-headed and didn't before, and didn't want to go down that path again. So I surrendered to it. And this is where kind of how Spiritual Living by Che came about.
Excellent. I mean, I know there's so many people on here that are in institutions thinking about shifts, and I think you just inspired them by just what inspired you to really take a different path. How about you, Dana? What inspired you to be an entrepreneur and to be on this journey?
Well, my dad has always been an entrepreneur. So I was actually working since I was 6 years old in his business. And I always knew that I wanted to work for myself. But then the dream went away, got into the 9 to 5 after college. But I still had that desire to create something. And then yoga found me. I don't say I found yoga. Yoga found me because I surely wasn't looking. And as I began to practice, and similar to Dea, just seeing things from the inside and how can we change and how can we support the community, I was inspired to just start it in my living of doing it full time. It was just going to be a little side thing. But it really grew. So I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit, and my dad is still with us, and he still advises me on what I should be doing and what I shouldn't be doing. So it feels good to be able to offer this art in a way that comes purely from my heart, and it doesn't have to come through the filter of what someone else thinks it should look like.
And so what's your dad's business? You can't bring up a dad.
Yeah.
Give me the
so
bypass.
Daddy is a caterer. So he's 88 now. So he is, relaxing. Mom moved him from New York back to South Carolina, where she's from. So he's still doing something out of the house, but he did catering. But I've learned to create experiences for people. So it wasn't just food. Dad created this experience. He's always very jovial, and he loves to talk to people, and he loves to understand people. And I really got that from him. And I'm an introvert, but this is a very extroverted field that I'm in. But my love of people and my love of listening to stories and providing safe space, it really keeps me going. So I guess food and yoga, kind of.
Hey, both of y'all talked about art, healing, all those things. I want to get into it. And before I do that, this is the moment when people many times pull out their pad and paper. They're going to take some notes on y'all. We're chopping up your quotes as well and putting them in the chat on Facebook and here in Zoom. But let me ask you this. So you both started practicing yoga and then you shifted into a business. Can you tell people what steps did you go through to start your business? Most of the entrepreneurs we feature started with something they loved and then chose to go into a business. So tell us about that shift and that journey. What steps did you go through? So I'll start with Dana and then go to Daya.
So the first thing, and a lot of people that want to take that leap, they're thinking about what that 9 to 5 is giving them as far as like a paycheck and stable income. My first step was seeing what that 9 to 5 was taking away from me. So it was creating a lot of stress. And I realized that I was spending money as a result of that stress and working in a 9 to 5 that I really did not enjoy. So I had to get very realistic. The first thing I had to do is look at what I was spending and why I was spending money. And I also decided how much I needed to survive. So before I even quit the job, I said, okay, this is the amount of money that I need to survive. I had to think about ways that I could hit that number. So it wasn't about going out there and saying, oh, well, the universe is going to take care of me. I said, no, the universe will, but I have to understand what it is that I need. So I decided what I needed to survive, and then some extra things for self-care, and then how I wanted to serve. So I knew for me, because I was coming from a very well-paying 9 to 5, that teaching weekly classes wasn't going to get me to that number without stressing me out and then putting me back in the cycle. So I said, what is a smart way to do this? Well, workshops and one-on-ones with people and small group sessions. So I taught my weekly classes, and then I also created a category for me to create more value with less time. And I went from working full-time to part-time with my job. And I talked to my boss. I actually tried to quit. And he was like, no, I value you. You're so great. I said, why didn't you tell me this for like the last 7 years I've been here? Now I want to leave you. Let me know how much you value me. But I had a conversation with him. I said, this is really important for me to explore. I don't know where it's going, but I do need the time and space to explore it. We decided that I could do part-time at the job while I explored it. I did part-time for a little while until I got into a rhythm. I had to, and I try to divorce everything I learned in corporate America. I'm like, oh, I'm not going to be selling to people. And oh, no, I'm not going to be all about numbers. And then I realized, well, you need to marry those two things, your love for people, a community, with business strategies so that you can survive. Yep. So I took some of the things that I knew and I reached out to my inner circle. So instead of every month wondering, am I going to get these people to serve, I would plan and say, okay, I got to go to the community centers. I got to go to the churches. I have to go reach within my sorority. I have to talk to people to ask them, hey, I'm not trying to sell you something. I want to offer you a solution to your problem of stress. I promise you the value is to far outweigh what you're paying. So each month I thought a month and ahead. And before I quit my 9 to 5, I made sure that I had at least 3 months of income where I would not feel uncomfortable. So all major bills paid, food and everything I needed. So everyone can be an entrepreneur, but be willing to do that work of planning. And it's boring, it's frustrating, it's overwhelming. But you can also reach into your network to see, do you have a friend that has the mind of an accountant that can look at your budget unemotionally and give you some ideas and give you some help? Yeah. We think that we have to do it alone. You don't have to do it alone. It just takes planning and discipline. Mm-hmm. Planning and discipline writes the story for freedom. So I planned. And when I left that job, guess who was my first corporate client? That job. Wow. And I talked to them for about 6 years or so after I left, because I knew the stresses they were facing. I knew how they needed to receive yoga. So I like the philosophical side of things like Daya, but they didn't want to hear that. So I said, okay, this is going to help you with productivity, reduce turnover and all of that. So I needed to know, I knew their language and I knew what they would be open to. So I worked with them for 6 years and it was wonderful. So when you want to make that shift, don't worry about what you won't have. Solve that issue now. be very honest with what you need. And when you get excited about what you're doing, abundance from all different forms will flow in. But you can't just say, oh, I'm going to leave it to the universe, because the universe wants you to have a plan too. So being very planned and understanding what it is you need and getting out there, and know that you don't have to do it alone. Talk to your community, talk to your network, talk to your family. My family, they were like some of my best clients in the beginning.
Everybody has that friends and family, the friends and family round, whether you are in whatever business you are in, friends and family round comes up. Let me give you, you had 8 points I took notes on, of steps that you went through. One, so profound for you to say, you figured out not what the 9 to 5 was giving you, but what it was taking away from you. Second, you looked at what you were buying and how. So you looked at your budget, your lifestyle. How are you spending your resources? Third, you realized that when you had to realize what you needed to serve and what you wanted to serve. Fourth, you talk about figuring out the means by which you would do that, whether it was workshop, individuals. So how are you going to funnel your service or what you're doing? And then what form is it going to take? 5, you talked about when you went from full-time to part-time. So you didn't quit your job altogether. You scaled it based on giving you time and space to explore. Really profound. When 6, you went looked at really thinking about what was your friends and families, and helping you to figure out 7 point, who you would serve and your value proposition. And 8, you talked about making that savings, right? Planning and discipline. This is what you said. It was really profound. Planning and discipline, write the story to freedom. Beautiful. And then the 3 months of reserve, because if you have 3 months of reserve, you want to be able to, excellent points, that nuggets, gems that you just spewed out. How about you, Dale? What was your journey what were the steps you went through again?
Almost the exact opposite of what Dana just described.
Oh, all right. We have some other points. We're gonna have another 8. Okay, let's
so yeah. So for mine, and I don't know that I had specific points, because mine, truthfully, because of the circumstances under which my prior career had ended, I did not have the option. And I was an attorney, right? So I'm a very logical, rational, strategic person. And so this wasn't actually the first business that I had attempted to start. I had one attempt before years ago in Indiana. So I kind of knew the nuts and bolts, like what you need to do and the business plan and develop all of that. But for me, it got to a point where I was in that kind of the last full-time job, where I was like, okay, this is having consequences on a soul level for me. Mm-hmm. I cannot stay in this place and plan for X amount of time, because there was so many harmful things that were happening there, and that were targeted specifically at me, that there was no way to preserve myself and stay in that space. And so, it wasn't that I leaped, right? Because like I said, I thought about it, and I'm like, okay, if I make this move, what's going to happen? Okay, I'm not wealthy. I grew up poor, on welfare, became, a single mother, and was young and on welfare, when I raised her. So I had already been like poor. Yeah. I didn't come from means at all. And so I was like, okay, what this means if you let this go. Mm-hmm. Is it worth it? And so for me, I've never been somebody who was strongly motivated by money. And so I was like, okay, you already know how to make it. You already grew up in the hood. You know how to make it. You're going to make it. It's about how much is this money worth? And it was the most money I had ever made in my life, probably the most money that anybody in my family had ever made. And so I was like, that money kept me in that situation. That was the only reason why I was still there, because I knew from the beginning of my career that there's more than one way for you to be an activist, right? There are more effective ways to be an activist outside of being a lawyer too. And so I knew that, but it was like, okay, there's these worldly accomplishments, this, I'm the first in my family, the first in my community, the first, and, I have this, but what am I giving up, kind of in a similar way that Dana looked at, like, what am I sacrificing? And for me, it was my health, my well-being, my soul, like, was really, like, I was suffering a lot. And so after probably, I think it took me a month for me to write and come up with the words that I wanted to say when I was like, I'm out of here, deuces. And, y'all racist, by the way, and, whatever consequences were going to happen after that, because there was some legal action that happened after that too. But it took me a month. I submitted it and had no regrets whatsoever. And I still do not have any regrets about making that decision. I don't recommend this if you have the relationship with your employer, and in your situation where you can do this more strategically with planning, that is definitely the best way to go. But for me, it was the beginning of a walk of faith for me. So I left. There were times where there wasn't enough money and there wasn't food, and it was black eyed peas and rice for a lot of days. But during that same time period, in what I've found in my life is the most challenging times of my life have been oftentimes, followed with the most profound lessons and the most profound and fastest periods of growth. And so kind of in that same transition where I left that job, I'm simultaneously healing as I'm starting a business, which seems overwhelming, except for when you factor in that this was all spirit putting this stuff into motion, right? So every worry, it was like, I have this anxiety, but it was like, what can you do? We're going to focus on today. We're going to be in this moment. Today, you have what you need. Today you have these beans, you have this rice, you have this brain, you have this knowledge, you have these past experiences. How are you going to mix that up today and keep faith as you keep walking through it? And so I want to say that period for me lasted for a while, but it strengthened my connection with spirit, with the divine throughout. I made it through, my daughter made it through. She was in college when all of this was happening as well. And so for me, there isn't like a formula to it other than using what you have and keeping faith when you find yourself in a situation that was something that, was unpredictable, but that's too harmful for you to stick around with. And so as far as kind of the nuts and bolts of developing the business, meanwhile, while I was kind of going through my own healing process, I used that and kind of documented the questions I was asking myself, the experiences that I were having, to start to craft the workshops that I created. So it's like, this is what my healing journey was. I was journaling. I was, kind of walking through this, studying as I was going through that process. And, racial hurt isn't something that's unique to me, right? And so I knew this is going to have value to somebody else. As I go through that. And that's the way I chose to use that experience, instead of dwelling in kind of the depths of the pain and the harm that came from it. And so I kind of, I'm an attorney, so I knew how to look up stuff and create the LLC. I did crowdfunding through Kiva. That helped. And, my circle of family and friends and professional people, they all knew what I was going through. And so I think I was funded in like 2 or 3 days for the amount of the loan that I requested. And so and so to see other people like having faith in me, and, people are turning up in my classes. I'm at a church because I can't really afford very much in terms of space. So, I find a church, they have low rates. And then, the next thing I know, like 30 women are doing yoga with me. And that's encouraging and keeping me going and renewing my faith. And so it was, like I said, it's exactly the opposite of what Dana did, which I absolutely would recommend that if you can, you do it that way. But if you can't, and you find yourself in a situation that seems overwhelming, for me, faith is what got me through every single solitary day of it, kept me going, seeing other people and looking for the spirit in other people who are interacting with you at that time, because the divine talks through other people, puts opportunities ahead of you if you're staying open to them. And so I think that for me, that was the key to all of it.
No, you had you dropped a number of gems. You say you did it a different way. I would say you did it the way that you were supposed to do it, and it all turned out well. So I think for the entrepreneurs that are on here, there is not one path. And I think what both of your stories demonstrated was that you pulled on different resources, pulled on different elements to get to where you are. And there are folks on here that are watching that are doing the same thing. They're making the best out of what they have. I think you gave a really, and one, I applaud your courage, because I know that when you are in some institutions, they can steal your soul. They can. And you have to protect it, because if you lose that, you don't have anything left. So, I applaud you for recognizing that and moving when you needed to save yourself. Because if you lose your spirit, you can't get that back. Second, you talked about how you really did a walk of faith, and getting yourself journaling, which I think was so profound, that you realized that the things that you were going through could be helpful for someone else's journey. I hope it becomes a book at some point. I'm hoping that's what we're leading to. The second tip that you really pointed out was you got your business in order. So you are a lawyer. So you were able to get the LLC, get all of the documentation and the records and the compliance documents in order. Second, you use that friends and family, again, to do your crowdfunding 2 to 3 days on Kiva. Huge accomplishment. And then really continue to use your network. If there was going to be a summary, how did you use a church to get the space? How did you use all of these things and resourcefulness, and many times going through struggle to make it out? I think great nuggets, great lessons. Let me shift us and let me make sure I give everyone a chance to engage in this conversation. I already see your comments, your chats, your all of your accolades for these two amazing women. Continue to do that in the chat on Facebook. If you'd like to text them in, you can text them in 22333, type JHUWL in the message, or you can put them in the chat on Zoom. I'll get all of those questions, and I promise to weave them into this conversation. I want to ask a question just to level set with everybody right now. You both are yoga instructors. What is yoga? You talked about healing, you talked about all of these things. I think people think like, oh, this is like HIIT or body. Y'all talking about something much different. So I want you to tell us, Dana, I'm gonna start with you. What is yoga, and what are you for the novices out here who don't know what this is their first introduction? Tell us a little bit about what your business is and what you do.
Okay, are you
So you want to know what
Dana or
oh, sorry, y'all trying to throw me off with these names. And then I'm going to go with Daya.
So Dana, so for the novice, yoga it's a system. It's a system for health. It is a system to align you mind, body, and spirit. And I always explain it like you can go to the gym and address your body, but then your mind may put you in another place that really negates everything that you just did in the gym. Your spirit is the part of you that wants you to be healthy, happy, and whole. So the spirit is generally what gets the interest peaked in yoga. And what yoga does, it uses different techniques and tools to get you into alignment. So it's like the body is doing one thing and the mind is all the way over here. And then the spirit, the soul is saying, hey, y'all, let's get together. Let's come together and be healthy. So what yoga does, it addresses us as a whole. So there are physical postures, what's called asana. And here in the West, when we think of yoga, like that's the first thing we're seeing, getting into this powerful pose, your leg behind your head or doing a split or something like that. But if we look at the intention of yoga, it's to bring wholeness. We address the physical body because there's trauma in our body. There's distractions in our body. We have repetitive stress in our body, which creates frustration and congestion in our mind. So we work out all of the physical things so that we can sit still. Daya earlier talked about the path of Raja Yoga. Raja Yoga is considered the royal path of yoga because it addresses the mind. Mm-hmm. So the mind is what writes the story of our experience. So yoga takes postures so we can sit down. It does things for the mind to help us to take like that alphabet soup of everything going on, 70,000 thoughts a day, to streamline it so we can focus. And then our spirit grows stronger so that we make these choices that are better for ourselves. And the great thing is that there are different paths to yoga. We call them branches or limbs, that if asana or getting the physical practice, if that's not your thing, you can take a path of intellect. We call it jnana yoga. You can read, you can study, you can get your yoga done through the mind. You can do the meditation. There's another path called bhakti. You can approach yoga through devotion of a divine being or higher self or whatever that is. So there's many different ways to explore this beautiful science, this system of wholeness. At Spiritual Essence Yoga, we do welcome every body, every mind, every belief. And our intention is to help you discover that greatness that we all have within, to help you do the heavy lifting of letting go of the stress, of the worry, of the physical pain that's caused by mental, emotional pain, and get to the root. It's often said that our natural nature before all of the other influences is happiness. So how can we tap into happiness regardless of all that's going on in the world right now? So yoga, it yokes you back together. So we're not here, there, and everywhere. We're one with ourselves. And then when we become one within ourselves, we don't look to point out fault in others, because what we see in others as far as fault, we're either struggling with it or we've overcome it and we're scared that we're going to go back there. So you can't see what you haven't embodied at some point. So it's about getting your life together, getting yourself together, and not just for today, but for all of the days that you have left here on this earth.
Oh, well, that was 101, 201, then 400 lesson. How about you, Dale? What would you say? What would you add to that?
I mean, I agree with much of what Dana said. The only, I guess, because of kind of my experience with it, and we come, obviously we come at things from different directions. So the way that I would probably go about describing it would be, it's a path. Yoga is a path of spiritual evolution with practical use. And so what I mean by that is that, yes, we're all spirit, mind, and body, but when the mind is in one place, the body is doing something else, you need to come together in union, right? So there is a unity of the individual that yoga offers through the teachings that, were created for, gurus, spiritual seekers, people who were trying to reach enlightenment. But those same tools can help us come in union first with ourselves, which is what Dana was did a beautiful job of explaining. But then also, when I look at it from an activist perspective, it is a tool, a very practical tool that can help us all unite together as a community, whether that's a Black community, whether that is a interracial, white, Black, Asian. It's a very practical tool that you can use to recognize the sameness of everybody else, the struggle that you may not be able to see as a Black person looking at that white person doing something crazy. You can come into that the more and more that you grow down this path. And so I very much see it as kind of the oneness, the union that spiritual evolution brings to you with the divine. Yoga offers that, but it also offers us here, us little, earthlings here who are in the physical realm, in the worldly realm, a way of first regulating ourselves, recognizing who we are as spirits, but then also recognizing that same thing and that same struggle in other people so that we can come closer to a place of healing and a place of oneness and unity. And so I'm totally idealistic with this. I have faith, though. I've seen it change. I've seen it change people in some of the workshops that I've gone through. And I think that there is a real desire on a soul level of all of us, a lot of us right now. Some people are stuck somewhere else, but a lot of us right now are on a soul level, are seeking some type of healing, some type of oneness with each other. And I think that these spiritual teachings, these ancient teachings that, whether it's yoga, whether it's, dream time from Aboriginal, tradition in Australia, wherever it is, all of those come together and the wisdom is all the same. And it teaches you not only how to take care of yourself, but how you also take care of and live righteously and in a right way with others as well. So that's the way that I'm viewing it today. It might change tomorrow.
So said some really great points, and we've gotten a number of questions. So people keep putting them in the chat. I will get to all of them. One person asked, what practice should people start first? Where should people start? Someone is saying, I've never done this. I am completely green. Where should they start, would you say? Dana and then Dea.
So my introduction to yoga actually was through a book. There was a bookstore here in Bowie called Caribou Books. It was a Black-owned bookstore. And I went in there and I found a book, Meditations from the Mat by Rolf Gates and Katrina Kennison. He's a brother, I believe he's in the Massachusetts area. And he did 365 days of breaking down the 8-limb path of yoga. So it's like the blueprint of practicing yoga. So I started to read how he was incorporating yoga into like real life stuff, like how he was using these tools, like they had mentioned, to get through like real day-to-day things.
Mm-hmm.
So someone that is interested in starting yoga, I would encourage the first step to be to read about it. And it's not wrong to go to a yoga studio and start a class, but you want to come there with some understanding that yoga is not just exercise. Because if we think that it's just exercise, we may drop it like exercise. You know, every January 1, we're committed. By March, we're like, eh. So understanding the principles of yoga and what it is. And I say, try not to Google it, because Google, you're going to find what you Google. Really getting a book. And I love to give resources. Read about yoga and see how yoga can help you. And then when it comes to the physical practice, know where your body is. So some students get discouraged because they want to just start moving. They want to just go and do all the yoga push-ups, but that can be discouraging. Yeah. And if your body wasn't moving like that before, yoga moves your body in a different way. We have men that come from the gym, power lifters. They do the first yoga push-up and they're like, oh my God, what's going on? I'm never coming back. Like, no, come back. Yoga moves your body in a very different way. So step 1 for those that are watching that may be new, get a book. So Meditations from the Rolf Gates is a great book. The Yoga by T.K. is a great book because it's very practical. It tells you how, where we are today, how can yoga help me stress? I'm dealing with racial tension. All of these isms.
They want the name of the book again, Dana. Say it slowly.
The first one is Meditations from the Mat. And just Google, it's Rolf Gates, ROLF Gates. And then The Heart of Yoga by TKV Desikachar. And I'm trying to look. I have one of the books there. If I'm able to go to my bookshelf real quick.
Yeah, go get the book. Go get the book. They keep asking me for the name of the book. So I want to make sure we're getting that for them. Again, we get no proceeds from the sale of these books. Okay. If you are an author,
I didn't know we were going to be able to talk about this. I mean, I do training like all the time. So it's just like, ooh, I love to share this. So it might be.
Okay. All right.
So this is Meditations from the Mat. And it's 365 entries. So you can read this day by day. It's not dated. It just gives you a walk through the 8-limb path. And then this one is The Heart of Yoga by TKV Desikachar. And believe it or not, these are, I don't know if libraries are open just yet, but if you don't want to invest in it, most libraries do have these tools, because I've sent my trainees to get them, or getting them on bargain books or slightly used on Amazon. And you may actually be able to find some PDF passages so you can look at it. But these 2 books, it takes it off the mat initially. And it tells you, well, how is yoga relevant to what I'm going through right now? Like I can take a walk around the block and move my body. Why do I need to invest time and energy into this practice? Because this practice supports every nook and cranny of your life.
Excellent, man. Wow, y'all are just throwing so much out. I want to make sure I get to all these questions. So a couple of people have asked this a number of times. Our belief is that yoga is a physical activity that happens in person in some respects. So how did COVID shift your business? Did it have any impact on? There is a being present in your presence, that aspect to it as well. So how did COVID impact your business, Dea? And then I'll go to back to Dana.
So So all of my offerings were in person prior to COVID-19. And I had, because I also do not only just like the classes and workshops that I've referred to, I also now I actually have a product line. It's on my website. And so where, there's an e-commerce store, but I was also doing community events. So I had planned, my plans for 2020 were, okay, we're going to expand some of our community events. We're going to be outdoors. We're going to do a Juneteenth. That was not happening. Like, it was like, nope, not in 2020, you're not. So it really shut down a lot of just everything that I was doing, because so much of what I was doing was in person. More asana focused, but I already had the workshops and I had the workshops going. And so then it required me to shift not only those to a digital platform, which for the way that I do it, it was more difficult to try and do that shift into a digital. So part of the way that kind of my natural, eco-friendly and organic wellness products came about was because that was one of the transitions that I used during COVID. It was something that I had been playing with even before COVID happened, but COVID kind of accelerated those plans. And so, I kind of went through kind of the natural remedies, wellness products that I had been using for over 20 years. I'm allergic to everything, sensitive to everything. So kind of curated the selection based on the products that I know that are really good quality and built that into my e-commerce, kind of upgraded those things, and then shifted the anti-racism workshops online. I had to leave out, of course, the physical practice, the asana part, which I think is important for most people, but it worked out well. And it actually expanded the audience of people who I could get. So that meant that, in the first session that I did in digital, I was able to get, Asian people who were in Massachusetts and, New York City in the group. We had representation of Black men, like from the Midwest, from the East Coast. We were able to get, experiences from white people who were throughout the country and from various backgrounds. So it just kind of expanded the conversations, the depth, the differing perspectives in the way that we covered that. So all in all, like COVID, it's been a really hard time for a lot of people, but in terms of what it gave my business, it gave me a time period to kind of slow down, revamp some things, rework some things, figure out better ways and more ways, I would say, to serve the community, particularly in Baltimore. I'm looking forward to like working on a partnership in West Baltimore where it's very, very resource, like they're lacking in a lot of resources. And so I'm really excited about being able to bring this over there by working with some of the grassroots efforts that are already over there. So all in all, despite a very, very challenging time for us as, humanity, in terms of service wise, as a yoga practitioner and, a spiritual seeker, it's been a real blessing in terms of what's been going on with the business.
Yeah, it seems like so many of you found opportunities that you never would have explored during this time. The creative juices of folks, I'm always astonished by like how creative people are to stay connected, even physically distant. So Dana, how did COVID impact your business?
Well, they shut down Prince George's, I believe, like March 16th. 2 days later, we were Zooming. I was thinking ahead and I was like, oh, this is going to be for 2 weeks. So we set up Zoom and the instructor would come into the studio by themselves, teach the class. We worked out all the kinks. But in my mind, I was like, oh, they said 2 weeks and we'll be back. And so as 2 weeks continued to be extended, I knew I had to figure out a way to make the experience just as consistent as it was. I was in the middle of a 200-hour teacher training and everything, all of the threads just unraveled because I'm thinking, okay, we're going to be back. And I believe I had COVID in January because I'd gotten really sick. The doctor didn't know what was going on, kind of threw some medicine at me. And I was sick for like until March. And then all of this came up and I'm like, okay, so personally, it was hard because I was still battling with the illness. Yeah. And then I was trying to create this in-person feel. So I just gave it to the creator and I started to say, okay, you're near but far but near. So we really promoted being able to see our students. We set up a big screen. The instructors would look in the screen and talk to folks. So it made them feel like they were still there. Like Dea, we grew to the opportunity of being able to see people all around the world our students that had moved away from the area, they came back because they can practice with us online now. And it made me think about some of the other programs. I taught a Thai massage training online, and Thai massage is a physical form of body work. And I'm like, well, we're going to see if this is going to work. So I was able to do it and see it and give guidance as if they were in person. So it expanded my mind because I was extremely resistant to the technology. I love to see people. I love to hug people. I love to be in that room, in that space. But I realized that instead of seeing this as something that was blocking my business, it was a growth potential.
Yeah.
And now, as things are opening back up, we've gotten the technology really tight, and we're able to really expand and offer this message that yes, you can heal to the world. So it's a great benefit of the pandemic. So as you said, there's a lot of entrepreneurs that are built around these challenging times. So it made me get out of my head about how I wanted to do things. And I allowed spirit to guide me into how things are going to be. So, we're here and we're virtual, and we're going to continue to be that way, even as things start to reopen.
No, absolutely. And it's interesting. Now your services can go all over the world. I mean, they had talked about folks in the Midwest. You would never be able to do that, right? They're not, just the expansion of the work. So both of you are quite accomplished. It was not hard for us to find you. Our team who scouts all over to find the best in every industry, you are the two rose to the top. So tell me what has been the greatest accomplishment you've achieved? So Dana, I'll start with you and then go to Dana. What's the thing you're most proud of after being in business for so long?
I still consider myself to be a newbie.
All right, okay, claim it.
But yeah, I'm still learning. But I think that the greatest, I guess, achievement for me is the internal one, because honestly, part of the reason why I never started my own organization, even as an attorney, was because it was just it was a lot of self-doubt. It was not having faith that I was going to be able to make it. I knew I didn't have a lot of money, to do virtually anything, right? As a social justice attorney, you're not making any real money. And so, I didn't want to deviate from my, my commitment to serving. But I was like, no, the only way I can do this is if I'm working for someone else. If when you're building somebody else's dream, you never get yours. You going after somebody else's goal, you're never going to get yours. And so I think for me, it's been just, I surprised myself by my capacity to stay faithful when I had no idea how anything was going to pan out, how I was going to eat, how the rent was going to be paid. So that one for me was just a very personal, just achievement, because it's that the self-doubt, that can destroy everything for you in every context, right? And it can keep places where you don't need to be, and you can doubt yourself. And so just kind of using my faith to counter that is what I think has been probably the biggest victory, because it's made everything else possible by being able to do that. And I did not have that type of faith as an employee. I didn't. So I just didn't. So
no, faith makes the impossible real. It makes it possible. It really does. If it's a short thing. So I applaud you. Huge amount of, I know, encouragement and inspiration you both are providing, but I think those nuggets are really, really important for people to hear. What about you, Dana? What's been your greatest accomplishment?
Just, honestly, still being here and still being in this growth phase. I was in my home until 2008, and then I moved the studio out of my home into a small property that I have. And I was going to stay on that property, but Spirit has a way of moving me. All of the pipes burst one winter, and the amount of money it was going to take to repair it, it wasn't feasible. So I had to think about another location, and the size had grown. So moved into this my first commercial space in 2015, and I thought I was just going to be good there. Then Spirit came knocking again, and if you ignore Spirit, they're going to have someone else do what you're dreaming about, and you're going to make you mad. So I got the call to expand the studio again. And this expansion, we had conversations and everything was on the table in November and December of 2019. Then we know what happened in 2020. But I reached out to my community because things had really gotten financially uncomfortable.
Mhm.
I reached out to the community. I was very vulnerable. I reached out to the county and I put my pride aside and said, listen, this is my mission. This is why I'm here. And I want to continue to serve, but I need help.
Mhm.
So I was able to open the second studio space in September 2020. So being able to grow during these times of strain and stress is really one of my greatest accomplishments, but it's not about me. It's about the community. It's
Mhm.
about my passion to serve the community and hold safe space for them that keeps me going. You know, I've had these midnight conversations with my husband. I'm like, you know what? I'm still very employable. And but I kid you not, after I have those conversations, I'll have someone come and say, this space has changed my life. I've been going through hell in my life and I come here and I feel seen, I feel heard, and I feel at home. So this keeps me going. And I know that the financial discomfort, it's just one of those things. It's a fluctuation that I expect as finances come in, finances flow out, that I have to see it as a pattern and not get so stressed about that. Because, you know, my father went through grand depressions and I'm unlearning some of those abundance blocks right now. So me being able to support two spaces, so I have two sizable spaces, and you know, every month I just give it to God, say, you know what, I'm here for my community.
Yeah.
I'm going to allow whatever resources to keep me here, I'm going to allow it to come through, even if it doesn't make any sense to me. So being able to get out of my own way and acknowledge, yeah, I'm still scared. You know, I've been an entrepreneur for nearly 2 decades, and I still have moments of, but for anyone out there that's listening and they want to do it or you're doing it, that if your mission is to serve with your whole heart, whatever you need will flow in. Let it come in. Let it come in. It may not make any sense. It may seem odd. Let it come in. Because if your focus is on serving and helping our community with healing or whatever it is through products or services, know that the abundance, the resources will flow in, but you have to allow it.
That's true. It's so true. Just great points. And that's right. You still are employable, but I think you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. So you still can get a job if you want. My daddy always said, if everything fails, you can flip a burger at Burger King. And I'm sure you can get that job. So we all can get that job, but that's not what's meant for us. Let me make sure I get this question in. I'm surprised the team almost let me forget this. I forgot to say Oprah. Oprah is usually watching, and we believe today is one of the same days. So I want to have you tell her. We have a number of other investors. So anybody I didn't mention, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you by not mentioning you today. But what advice do you have for them on how they can support Daya's and Dana's and your businesses flourishing, but other businesses like yours, people who are serving, right? That point was so poignant. Can you talk to them and give them some advice on how do we allow for more individuals to serve within our communities, which ultimately is to the benefit of all of us. So I'll start with Daya and then Dana.
So I would say, showing up, just showing up. So, you know, if it's me, if it's somebody else in the community who has opened up a store, show up. I know you're in a routine of going somewhere else for whatever it is that you need. I know you go to Target, I know you go to Walmart, but really we're doing this for a very specific reason. You know what we're doing, we are bringing life back into the communities that we serve. We can actually take care of ourselves so we don't have to go through that. You know, whatever those experiences are, you know, corporate, I could go on and on about, you know, the impact of corporations on, you know, society at large and the environment. But, you know, when we're taking this risk and, you know, we're coming there out of service, is not to take from the community. It's not, out of ego. It's because it's all out of love. And we're really, we're trying to fill a need that the community is, in need of, that we know because we're part of the communities. And so just showing up, whether that's at a store, whether that's coming to a yoga class, whether it's, doing digital stuff, share. And even if you can't, because everybody doesn't have the means, right? Maybe you don't have the means, but first off, I would say that in yoga classes, you can hit me up. If you really don't have no money, you coming anyway, to be honest, because I know what that struggle is. So, just say the word. Every yoga teacher I know would understand what that is. And so beyond that, if you can't afford to come in and pay in that way, just share us, tell your friends, social media, any of those things. Those are all going to be really beneficial and helpful to just about everybody. We need that love too. Like we try and put ourselves in a position where we share love and we share, the spiritual wisdom with everybody and try and be a beacon, but we need that love back too. And so just, kind of making it a mutual thing. Whatever you can't do, there is always something else that you can do, even just to share, telling somebody else about it, spreading love, sending us a message and saying, hey, thank you, we appreciate you.
Yeah, no, great points. Show up. That's really, really excellent. Dana, what do you say? Oprah's watching. Confirm.
And Oprah's on my vision board.
Yeah, she on mine too. I need to put it behind.
So just understanding what our effort is in the community. And yes, the financial support is wonderful, but for investors that have been there and have done that, being open to guiding us business owners and how can we do better? How can we elevate ourselves? What programs, what things do we need to read? How did they shift the energy? So I think what's priceless is someone that has made it to a certain level, telling us when you were at this point that we are, what are some of the things that we can do physically, energetically, and mentally? And then when it comes to financial support, helping us to pay it forward. I want to do many more things in the community. Like Daya said, not everyone can invest in yoga. We have programs where we do work exchange, and some of our members pay for others to come and do yoga. So it's like helping us to pay it forward, and not just doing that, but advising us how to be sustainable. How can we get to that level to where we can now invest in businesses like our own, that so we can support?
Excellent point. I think what I always remember, what's more valuable than money is the knowledge that will allow for me to be able to sustain myself, because that lasts me longer than any check. So I think both of you just saying that to us, and as we make choices about where we frequent, we make critical choices every day. Make the choice to support those who are supporting our community. I want to make sure everyone knows how to support you, how to get in touch with you, where they're coming. So Daya, tell us, how do we reach out to you? How do we follow you, support you?
So my website, which has information about both the retail side, the organic, natural goods for health, beauty, home, gardening, all that you can find me at www.cheyoga.org. That was the original business name, but it's the shortest way to get to me. So www.cheyoga.org. My email address, same thing, dea.lott@cheyoga.org. Phone number 202-656-4651. And you can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook. Drop me a line. I love talking to people. Come to my classes. I have them outdoors until the cicadas take us over here in Maryland.
We were talking,
and
okay.
then I'm
not claiming that.
Then I'm gonna go digital. I want to see nature, y'all. No.
All right. Okay. Dana, Dana, how do we get in contact with you? She getting off on
Yeah, the cicadas got me shook. Online, www.spiritualessenceyoga.com. Everything you need to know about the business is there. And we're very active on Instagram. We're there at SE, so S as in spiritual, E as in essence, _yoga. So hit us up on Instagram or on the website where you can find all of the things.
It has been a pure pleasure to have you, Daya and Dana. So blessed to have you on today. And as they said, show up for them, support them. I'm going to try to figure out how to take part of my team to a class. They, sometimes they want to go, sometimes they don't, but they might want to come. So I'm gonna make that sure that happens for them. Let me give a couple of announcements. Then we're gonna close out. We will be returning on May 20th. So we're taking a break next week. We will be back on May 20th at 1 p.m. with Ashley Wilder of Creatively Nomadic and Larry Poncho Brown. And you have no idea how excited I am about this. I love art. I'm going to put up I'm going to have to bring my Larry Poncho Brown painting from downstairs to upstairs. He's from the Art of Poncho. These two amazing visual art entrepreneurs. You do not want to miss this. I want to thank our partners, JH Connects. So follow us on JH Connects at Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Johns Hopkins University, Johns Hopkins Health System, Hopkins Local, the Mayor's Office of Small Minority-Owned Women Business, the One Out Foundation, Goldman Sachs 10KSB, and Bloomberg Philanthropies. Thank you, Dea. Thank you, Dana. We really appreciate you.
Thank you, Alicia. Thank you. Thank you so much for finding us.
Yeah, no, y'all are easy to find.
Thank you.
Thank you.